plastic bag is full, we throw it into the nearest landfill. It's out of sight and out of mind. What is the state of our humankind? And I don't know what to say, 'cause we produce more every day, and we call it garbage.
Today on Going Green for Green, we're looking at the construction industry and how demand for greener buildings is changing the way our construction industry operates and builds its projects. Construction and developers as a whole are constantly seen as, by the environmentalists, as the enemies. I mean, if we're taking apart inefficient old buildings and building new ones that are more efficient, are going to last longer, and operate at a lower expense in terms of its monthly costs, that's a good thing. Today we track down Jeff Smith, who's the CEO of Ellis Don, certainly one of the largest construction companies in Canada, if not North America, and talk to Jeff about how Ellis Don is being affected and how their practices are being changed by demand for greener buildings.
I think it's an accurate premise that developers and construction companies have been insensitive to environmental concerns up until very recently. They weren't the enemy of the planet, they just weren't thinking about it. And I think we were all too concerned with short-term cost versus not just long-term environmental impact, but long-term return on the investment in energy savings and waste recycling and that kind of thing. But over the last 2 or 3 years, it's gone to the top of their priority list. The value of their buildings is affected now. Plus, these are good people. People want to do good things for the planet. They just didn't know how. And now it's the first thing that everybody asks us at the beginning of the design and construction process. How do I get LEED Silver? How do I get LEED Gold? What can I do? What's involved? I read a stat that 35% of the solid waste globally is generated by the construction industry. So that's the first place we've got to make a dramatic change. On the Child Development Center in Calgary, we were able to divert 78% of the waste from that site away from landfills into recycling opportunities. So as you can see, that's a dramatic impact. There are about 58 different levels of design and construction process that you've got to hit to get a LEED Platinum accreditation. On the Child Development Center, we hit all 58 of them. There are different levels of LEED. The main ones are silver, gold, and then platinum. All of them deliver dramatic increases in efficiency of the building in terms of energy use, and decreases in terms of wastage being created by the construction process. You can get to a silver LEED rating for your building, which means the building is more valuable, better to work in, and much better for the environment if you plan it properly for a zero cost. To get to a LEED Gold rating, which is a really dramatic savings on both of those, both waste and energy, I think it's about a 5 or 6 or 7% increase in construction costs, but it's more than paid back over the life of the building, even in the first 5 to 10 years of the life of the building, in energy savings and other efficiencies. Platinum is a little more. Call platinum about 10, 12%. Again, more than paid back, but it does require that upfront investment.
You're looking at basically, if you invest up front, you're looking at 10 years to recoup your costs and actually start to see savings on going LEED Platinum.
If you're talking about LEED Platinum, I think that's fair. If you're talking about LEED Silver, as I say, which again is a terrific improvement, it's zero.
Check us out online at www.goinggreenforgreen.tv or follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Going Green for Green is brought to you by Ontario Electronic Stewardship and recycleyourelectronics.ca.
Here we are in downtown Toronto at the Bay Adelaide Tower, and what's being built there is a far more efficient and a far more environmentally friendly building than was there previously. They are building a gold platinum 100-story office tower where the energy usage and the efficiency of the building is going to be so much more superior to what was there previously that one has to kind of change its view of construction or of development in general. The construction industry is really adapting. You know, Carl Blanchard from WZMH Architects is going to tell us about how architects are totally looking at their business in a different light as a result of the demand that's changing from people who want environmentally conscious buildings.
LEED is a rating system for sustainable buildings. In terms of LEED, we worked with an integrated team right from the beginning of the project. So we worked with the engineers, we worked with the contractors to make sure that the decisions we made early on in the project would ensure that the building was a LEED building. It's an intensified site, it's on public transit. So those immediately give it some LEED status and some LEED points. You look at Bay Adelaide, it's a glass building. It in fact becomes a very energy efficient skin. Between the two layers of glass and the double glazing, the space is filled with argon. Argon becomes an insulating element within the building skin. So ultimately the energy that this building skin lets into the building is significantly less than some of the more traditional office buildings. You tend with LEED to build more durable buildings. In fact, you get a point for having a more durable building. So you're starting to choose materials and building systems, both mechanical systems and again building envelope that will last beyond their standard lifestyle, so that the desire, the need to replace those things is much less than in conventional buildings.
We're here in the back lot at Quantum Murray. This is one of the leaders across Canada in remediation strategies, in emergency response. They've got a really diverse business and dealing with some real environmental issues across Canada.
Well, Quantum Murray is really three companies that have come together in the last 2.5 years. Quantum Environmental Group, Murray Demolition, and Thompson Metals. Quantum Environmental Group started in 1992 out in Vancouver, and we are Canada's premier environmental cleanup company. So we do a lot of in-ground cleanups, contaminated soil and water, as well as above-ground cleanups, hazardous materials like asbestos, PCBs, lead. Murray Demolition is exactly as the name says, Canada's premier demolition company. And then Thompson Metals is a recycling and waste management company that handles almost all of the products that come off of our contracting sites. So we put those companies together so that at the end of the day, our clients, if they're finished with an old industrial site, they can hand us the keys. We'll go in, take out all the hazardous materials, decommission and salvage all of the reusable material, demolish the structure, get into the ground and clean it up, and at the end of the day, have a greenfield that's ready for redevelopment. Cleaning up the environment used to be an afterthought. We're significantly more integrated with many of our clients, looking at their operations and advising them oftentimes on, no, don't use this process, use this one, it'll be easier for us to decommission when the time comes. I think the latest trend that I see is all around beneficial reuse. One of the biggest problems that we have is in many jurisdictions from a regulatory point of view, once something is a waste, it's very hard to get it turned back into a product. And I use an example, things that used to go into landfills, steel, appliances, all those types of things, you know, those are products to us. We generate revenue from those kinds of things. Similarly, things like contaminated soil. We have technologies where we can treat contaminated soil and reuse them. And that whole biosolids, you know, biosol is the latest thing. It used to be that a lot of it goes to landfill, a lot of it goes straight to land application, which we're seeing a lot of change towards looking at taking what otherwise would be waste, turning them into a product.
The industrial sector of manufacturing in Ontario is a declining area. We see the growth in what we call obsolete scrap, which is scrap generated from cars, fridges, stoves, demolition. With the GTA population growing the way it is and will in the future, we see a great opportunity in the secondary scrap market versus the industrial and primary grades. The addition to demolition to our scrap metal facility has been a great source of feedstock. Our company's well equipped, is a one-stop shop company that can handle all of these situations for developers, for large corporations that are downsizing their facilities. And we see a great growth opportunity going forward with the infrastructure management of Canada changing and the government putting more money into infrastructure in the future.
A lot of what we're doing here is taking apart what our parents and our grandparents assembled on the assembly line. Essentially, if you will, this is a disassembly plant where all those products that were made and manufactured on the assembly line are now being dismantled, and everything right down to the screws, the nuts and the bolts, and the compressors and the conveyors and the metals and the wires are all being reused. Unfortunately, a lot of this material is bulked and shipped overseas to India and China, where those emerging markets have a huge appetite for scrap metals. Gary's going to talk to us a little bit about that and what the dynamics are with respect to commodities on the global market today. Anyway, stay tuned. We're going to be right back with James. James is going to take us through a tour through Thompson Metals here in Burlington, Ontario. This is Going Green for Green. Stay tuned. Check us out online at www.goinggreenforgreen.tv or follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Going Green for Green is brought to you by the Royal Bank of Canada.
This specific sea container over here, we're loading for overseas ferrous material. We call it heavy melt material. And as you can see, the crane puts it on the dock and the skid steer pushes it in. We bring various goods such as communication cable, copper, fridges, which we dismantle. We take the compressors out, aluminum rads, and we cut the extension cords, the copper, and we'll segregate it. As well as vehicles also come in here. Again, we'll take everything apart. The fuel tank, we'll dispose of it properly, and all the oils. We'll dispose of the tires, the interior, and we'll salvage in metal and segregate where applicable. We also have a bunch of aluminum rads that come in from vehicles and other equipment. Doesn't necessarily have to be cars. Sometimes it's just industrial equipment. Something very simple as pop cans come in through this facility. Aluminum rims from vehicles. Also aluminum turnings from various machine shops. Insulated wire from communication cable. Painted aluminum to just regular copper. And then it's graded from our boys inside the peddler area. Each container can vary anywhere from 38,000 to 60,000 pounds. The bulk of our material here in this section is shipped to India and China, the majority of it. So an example like this is actual pill covers from a medical lab. And this is lead and aluminum together. And it's another process that we do. Here at Thompson Metals, Quantum Murray LP, we look at everything as a resource. We try to find new innovative ways to do things and make things work so it's beneficial not only to the company but to the environment. And there's a lot of trial and errors that we do take in place, but for 10 trial and errors, 8 of them turn out in a positive manner for the company and for everybody in general. We have a Hamilton facility that we do a lot of sorting, which means that everyday garbage from contractors or residential waste now, when the truck dumps on their floor, we actually have a few pickers that go through the garbage and take out the aluminums, the coppers, anything that we can recycle, extension cords, anything we pull out of that garbage by hand. And then it goes into separate bins. We take the bins back to our Burlington facility, and from there we do more sorting, weigh it, and we ship it. Regular #1 copper, and again, this comes in either from demo sites that we sort or just regular contractors, residential. And it comes here, we put it through our shear. We have a man cutting in small pieces, and then we stack it nicely and ready for shipment. This is some aluminum that arrives here. This is the way we get it. We then load it with Bobcat. It loads it into our hopper. From there, what happens is a ram comes in and pushes it. It compresses it, it makes it into a bale. And that's the end result there.
I don't think us putting a large amount of scrap on the market affects the commodity. What affects the commodity, the scrap commodity the most, is the amount of material that is taken offshore to the emerging markets. Turkey is a very large producer of steel and supplies a lot of the Arab countries throughout that region. India and China have added steel mills at unprecedented pace, and their consumption, when the market is strong in one of those markets, their appetite for scrap is quite large. So when we start to read about boatloads of scrap being shipped off of any of the Atlantic or Pacific ports, you can almost guarantee that commodity might make an upward movement in North America to compete with the loss of scrap, as it is very much a supply and demand driven price with scrap steel. You know, one of the challenges we do face in our division within our company of Quantum Murray is that out of the three, with the exception of demolition, we're probably the most capital intensive requirements. As I said earlier, the cost of some of this equipment runs into the millions of dollars. And one of the processes that we want to add to our operation perhaps is a car shredder. The technology and advancement in the car shredders is grown immensely. The emissions controls, the source separation of all the different metals done mechanically versus manually, we can compete with any of the emerging markets in Asia that usually use cheap labor to sort those commodities. But it is a very capital intensive investment, but one that we see a great growth with the obsolete scrap grades, with the growth of the GTA area and other highly densely populated areas in Canada, such as Edmonton or Vancouver.
Check us out online at www.goinggreenforgreen.tv or follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Going Green for Green is brought to you by Ontario Electronic Stewardship and recycleyourelectronics.ca.
Within the community of London is a site called Pottersburg. It's actually a small little municipality on the fringes of London, Ontario. And Pottersburg is a place where the Ministry of Environment decided to store large amounts of PCBs. Of course, PCBs, we know, polychlorinated biphenyls, which are quite volatile and are carcinogens and have both the ability to affect the quality of air we breathe, certainly the water we drink, and even, for that matter, the ground on which we walk. The advancement of PCB destruction has finally allowed the Ministry of Environment to deal with the Pottersburg storage site. And Quantum Murray has been contracted to uncover and remove the PCB contaminated soils and trek them to north of Quebec City, where they have been destroyed by Bennett Environmental Group.
Really, what Pottersburg, the Pottersburg site is a very contentious site in that the contaminants have been there for over 25 years. What our client, the Ministry of Environment in Ontario, did, which I think was fantastic, was they brought a different level of thinking to it. They didn't just look at it as an environmental cleanup. They said, you know, this is a community issue. It's an area issue. So they have a community advisory group that gets together, talks about how we do the site. They elevated where typically on a dig and dump site you would see our equipment out working in an open field. Here, we're putting a cover over top of the entire site. We're going to build a building and work inside the building so that there are zero emissions coming off of our site while we're doing it. Those types of things that the ministry did that are really leading edge. They also did a quality-based selection. Oftentimes, clients look at, you know, what's going to cost us the least amount of money. What most clients have realized is that the sticker price at the beginning of the job oftentimes bears no resemblance to the sticker price at the end of the job if they pick the wrong partner to work with. So if you look at a quality-based selection, your cost control over the project is significantly better, because in the environmental business, you drill a 2-inch hole to find out what's in the ground. It's not until you're actually in the ground that you have a full understanding of the project, and then it's the character of the people you're working with that determine how that project goes from there on. So I should clarify, it's not a dump site. There was a cleanup that happened in the early 80s on an old industrial site that generated a lot of PCB contaminated soils. Now in the early 80s there was no solution to destroying PCB contaminated soils. So large storage vaults were constructed in the ground to store this material until such time as there's a solution. Today we have a solution. So today what we're doing is we're going into the site and removing those soils for safe destruction. Really our business the challenges are in the logistics, and actually it comes down to logistics. So cleaning up a dew-line site in the Arctic is a lot more challenging than cleaning up the site next door to our Toronto yard here. So those challenges are standard construction challenges. When we get into product and waste handling, really the challenge with those is where you have commingled contaminants. So in soils, if we have a gasoline mixed with a metal contaminated soil, or in buildings, as I said, if we have drywall and floor tile and carpet mixed with windows in a pile, it's very difficult to do beneficial reuse with those. So that's really what we look for, is how can we continue to segregate things more efficiently to allow for beneficial reuse. Those are some of the challenges. Every site has very particular challenges which make them unique, and we've had our fair share of them. Groundwater, if there's active groundwater, high odors on sites, those kinds of things are challenges, but they're things that you work your way through.
Sustainably speaking, today we find ourselves at Yonge and Dundas Square in the heart of the city. And we're going to talk to you and find out what issues you feel are important about the environment. Would you consider yourself concerned about the environment?
Very much so. Yes. Of course I am, yeah.
Yeah, concerned about the environment.
Yeah, I think about it, sure.
Yes, I am.
And what would be your #1 concern?
I think the amount of fresh water on Earth is my biggest concern.
Things to do with the ocean and pollution in the oceans.
Just basic things that everybody needs to survive. So basic needs like clean water.
I've been reading more and thinking about the industrial farming kind of deal, and I think it's pretty out of control.
What is it that you guys are doing to try and make a difference, if anything?
Definitely not using as many lights. Turning them off when they're not being used.
Choose to be vegetarian to lessen the impact on the amount of resources it takes to produce meat.
Cycling and recycling.
I use a drying rack instead of putting my clothes in the dryer.
Overall, there's a commitment to try and live a more sustainable existence and be at peace with this world. Whether some people think that water is more important, some people think food is more important. But overall, everybody's committed to living a better and sustainable life.
Check us out online at www.goinggreenforgreen.tv or follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
Another plastic bag is full. We throw it into the nearest landfill. It's out of sight and out of mind. What is the state of our humankind? And I don't know what to say, 'cause we produce more every day, and we call it garbage.